Hey there, Danielle Matthews here. I'm coming to you live from Florida. It is Monday, which means it's book club day, and we are continuing on with chapter 5. So we're reading Loyalty to Your Soul. If you are joining me live here for book club, let me know when you get here. And if you're catching the replay, let me know that you're on the replay. It is really fun to be able to work through all of these different books with you and continue this. Really, it's spiritual development. This is about spiritual psychology, loyalty to your soul. And it's very interesting. It gives another layer to things. Today we're going to be talking about, how many of you have a sibling that you're like, did we really grow up in the same household? Like, we are so vastly different. And there's this big conversation, all the time. I know there was in biology when I got my degree. Is it nature? Is it nurture? Like, where and why are things, like, where's the cause? Why are we the way that we are? What's it all rooted in? And in spiritual psychology, I think there is a layer that, to me, explains it better than anything else and can really help you understand, like, why could you and your sibling go through the exact same childhood and end up so vastly different? What is the reason for that? And we're gonna dive right in. There's a lot to talk about in this chapter, so glad you guys are here. And let's start. So we started on page 97. This is the chapter called "I Am Upset Because." And last week we talked all about how saying "I'm upset because all these things out here," why that really gives your power away. And today you're going to see also. Well, let's just get into it. You're going to see why these differences in you and your siblings and the people around you. So he says on page 99, I'm going to start there. I liked this quote. He says, "Every soul is born into the earth school with a specific curriculum, and that curriculum predisposes our developing egos to make certain interpretations of early experiences so that the patterns we're here to work on completing are actually seeded into our consciousness." Whoa. So it's not that your parents did or did something, that they should have or shouldn't have. It's not that you had a certain experience. It is that literally what they're saying is that your soul came here to learn certain lessons. And because of that, you're predisposed to interpret things in a certain way that's going to make you have to learn these lessons. Okay? Have to learn the lesson of, overcoming abandonment or self-worth issues or whatever it is. You're going to interpret the situations that are happening a certain way. This is wild. This is why a certain sibling maybe ends up, if there's an alcoholic father, right? One ends up being an alcoholic and the other one never touches alcohol. Like, why is that? They grew up in the same environment, right? Just different things that soul was supposed to learn. And so they interpreted and took things in a different way. Hey, Tina. Hey, Lou. All right. He was talking about how he was in this circle and everyone was kind of bashing their parents. Well, I'm this way because my parents did this, or they didn't do this, or they weren't home, or it was a single mom, or the dad left, blah, 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 right? And this one guy, he's at the end of the circle. He goes, man, my parents treated me all the ways that y'all are sharing that your parents treated you. He says, but somehow I always knew that was their stuff and it had nothing to do with me. So I never took any of it personally. Like, how did that person know? Well, because that soul's curriculum wasn't supposed to be triggered or getting any certain predisposition to anything based on how the parents were. Like, it just always knew that's their deal, not my deal. All right. That soul probably has other stuff to work on. Okay. This is why things develop so differently for all of us. He says, consider the possibility that rather than causing the challenges you face in life, your genetics and environment support the spiritual agenda that you're here to fulfill. They would say, well, you chose the family you came into, right? Because the environment would be in such a way that this could get triggered, this thing that you're supposed to learn. This is the phrasing that they say, everything in life is happening for you, not to you. It's happening in a way that is designed for you to become aware of the things inside of you that need healing. And if you don't have that kind of perspective, it feels like life is happening to you and you're a victim to a lot, including how you grew up and everything that unfolded. Right? It's very empowering to switch this. And I think it's super important. And I think society as a whole, like I talked about last time, it's like the court system is developed in a certain way, and society as a whole kind of believes in the victim mentality. And you have no power if you stay in a victim mentality. You just don't. So page 100, he says, we have found that if we can get between the experience and what the child decided about the experience based on his or her predisposition towards certain interpretations, we can begin the healing process. Why? because it's the interpretation one gives to an experience that's the real issue. It's not what happened. It's not that the dad was an alcoholic. It's how child A versus child B interpreted that. I'm not loved, or this is inevitable. I'm going to be this way. Whatever interpretation happened. I always talk about this. If you're in inner mastery, I talk about this equation all the time. External world plus your internal response equals your reality. Whatever is happening externally, it's the internal response. And what he's saying is that you come preloaded to interpret, as if you have certain sunglasses you come into this lifetime with, so that you interpret things in a certain way, so that your soul can learn about that certain thing. You can overcome it. It's the lesson plan. That's the curriculum, is how to learn, how to deal with abandonment issues. It's how to learn how to have a voice, how to learn how to have your own self-worth, right? That's why you're interpreting it that way. This is wild. This is heavy, but it's like the root of it all. It truly is the root of it all. Okay, he goes on to say, said another way, the core of healing involves a recontextualizing process through which people evolve to the place where they're seen through soul-centered eyes. In so doing, they actually redefine their reality by learning to choose interpretations more in alignment with soul-centered context. The result is an enhanced sense of self-compassion and a higher level of consciousness. There are things playing out. I've read so many books that talk about this. Like I was reading one, this is a sidetrack, but we're going there. I was reading one about a woman, she's like a psychic medium, and she was just, each chapter was a story, and it was kind of interesting. She's able to like still stay in touch with souls as they cross over. And, whatever you believe in that or not, interesting, because what I gathered from what she was sharing in these stories were the soul lessons, the curriculum. So for example, one that's sticking out to me right now was a mom whose son had killed himself on her birthday. And that son had been an addict, like a heavy addict. I don't remember if it was heroin or what it was, but he was a heavy drug addict and couldn't shake it. Had tried a million times, and the mom was always there. And the son happened to be living with her. And on her birthday, he committed suicide. So she was obviously devastated. And she speaks to this medium who speaks to the son. And the son says, my spiritual curriculum was to experience unconditional love. And he said, Mom, you gave me such unconditional love. My curriculum was complete. And I chose your birthday so that you'd never forget me. Like, I had this moment of like, man, there are layers of what is going on and what we're supposed to be learning that are so far outside of like what our own ego mind can understand. Like we're looking through a keyhole, you know what I mean? Like we're just looking through the tiniest little lens of like, this is how I want it to be and how it should be. We don't see the whole picture. Like that, if that doesn't just blow you back and go, yeah, I really don't know what's going on in life. And all I can show up is show up and do my best and see where I'm getting triggered and realize that's where my work is. Right? So high five me, put a 5 in the chat if that resonated with you. I think it's really important. And so it's this internal, right, interpretation of how we're experiencing the external circumstances. I mean, what a different shift for that mom to go, hey, I was a failure. My son turned out this way because something I did wrong, which is what she was thinking, to, wow, I gave unconditional love. I was there in a way that is what that soul needed for 20 something years. And then it was enough. Like, what a shift. It's amazing. There's a guy, he actually studied or was a professor at the University of Virginia, which is interesting because that's where I went to school. But he was talking about how, he was kind of trying to get information about past lives and past life memories and all this stuff. And he says, what's interesting, if you consider and accept past lives to be a truth and that people are coming in this life for a certain curriculum, whatever your beliefs, I'm not saying you need to believe this, but consider it. He says, consider. It would lessen the guilt on the part of parents. I mean, that's, I guess, why I just shared that story with you, because talk about how that parent was now no longer feeling guilty. Like, oh, this is what they were supposed to experience. It wasn't my fault that they did drugs, right? They wouldn't have as much of a burden that whatever goes wrong with the child is all their fault, either through genes or mishandling during a child's infancy. People themselves would have to take more responsibility for their own destinies. And wow, oh, wow, oh, wow, do people not want to take responsibility, right? It's a lot when you just go, yeah, it's in the mirror. Look in the mirror. This is your work. It's nobody's fault. But this leads us to principle number 13. So he's given us principles throughout this book. And this principle reads, personal responsibility is the foundational key that opens the door of freedom. Personal responsibility. This is the key that opens the door to your freedom. He said, regardless of the mechanism a soul uses to bring forward its curriculum, it's your individual responsibility to heal, resolve, or complete that pattern. My teacher says all the time, he says, I'm a guru. I can't solve these problems for you. God can't solve them for you. Your parents can't solve them for you. The only one that can solve it is you. You are the only one that can solve the internal stuff that's happening. Your internal triggers, the internal response you're having to external events. He says, regardless of what situation or circumstance you find yourself in, you're always responsible for the way you choose to respond. And what's happening is that a lot of times our responses are unconscious and automatic, and we just go into this flow and we're responding in a way that we don't even mean to be, that it's like not healthy. And until you realize, hey, I have a choice, and you create some separation, you can be more conscious about that choice. All right. And he talks about freedom, right? This door to freedom being free from the bondage of these unresolved issues, from this unconscious behavior. Freedom from what we've referred to as unnecessary emotional suffering. All right. He says freedom is only possible when you enter into a willingness to take personal responsibility. When you go, my internal response is my business, right? That's my problem. It's my thing to focus on. He says, until a person can say deeply and honestly, I am what I am today because of the choices I made yesterday, that person can't choose otherwise. You first have to realize where you actually have control. The only place you have control. Most of us try to exert control in the external world. We tell people not to do a certain thing, that they need to show up on time, that they need to do this, that, and the other, so that you feel a certain way. We try and control the external world so we don't get triggered. Good luck. Like, the world's going to keep happening, and it's exhausting using your life force energy to control out there. Control in here. It feels much better to be able to find calm amidst whatever's going on. It's a life you're going to want to live once you realize you can live it. Okay? He says, until you're willing to consider how the choices you're making contribute to your own drama and suffering, you're involved in the plight of the victim. You just are. And some people love being the victim. And you will report the situations in your life from the victim's perspective. As long as you insist upon blaming sources outside of yourself for your circumstances and ensuing disturbances, you will maintain yourself in a victim position and will suffer accordingly. And our society supports it, and it drives me wild to watch it. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's so disempowering, right? When you feel like a victim, it's so disempowering. The fact is, you have a choice about how you're going to interact and react to the circumstances you're in, and no one can take that from you. That is the most powerful piece of all of this, is that it's internal. No one can touch it. It's you. It's a personal internal choice. Once you realize you have it, okay, that's the freedom. He says, the moment you choose to accept personal responsibility about all of your inner experiences, this is when like trapdoor opens. I think he calls it like, the escape hatch opens up. And this is where now all of a sudden you discover there is a calm center that is always there in the midst of the hurricane, and you can reside there. And then you discover that is who you are. Okay, that's the power of what we're talking about. So, principle 14. Nothing outside of you causes your disturbances. That can be tricky, right? We all just came through a holiday here in the US, and we're going into the holiday season. And I find, being around family can be one of the most triggering. People know how to push your buttons, right? And what he's saying is nothing outside of you causes your disturbances. You allow your buttons to be pushed. Don't allow them to be pushed. Right? That's the whole thing. And he says there's no exceptions to this principle, and there's no avoiding it. You can either say, I'm upset because so-and-so said this or did this, or you can say, I am 100% responsible for any disturbance going on in my consciousness, regardless of what seems to have triggered it. There's no such thing as an in-between, right? He said you can't be pregnant and not pregnant at the same time. Like, it's one or the other. You're either 100% responsible for how you are interacting with external things, or you're blaming the outside. But the truth is, you have dominion over everything going on within your own consciousness. And once you realize that, you realize what you should and shouldn't give energy to, the thoughts that you need to pay attention to and the ones that you don't. And this is where your true empowerment is. Are you guys with me? Like, this is such an empowering lesson. I teach it slightly differently than he does, but it's the same core truth. No matter what goes on outside, You have the power and clarity to stay in balance and at peace inside. And whenever you get pulled off of that calm center, that's when, as he says, school is in session. This is something your soul came here to work on and learn about. And so pay attention. Like something inside of you should go, whoa, school's in session. This is the curriculum. What am I not learning? What have I not realized yet? How could I look at this differently? What new perspective do I need to have? Okay, this is what you need to do. This is easy to talk about here. Makes sense. You'll nod along with me. But then your sibling says something, your relative says something, somebody, says something nasty about you because of a choice or decision you made, and all of a sudden you're getting defensive. It feels icky. Like these emotions, they feel so real that it's like, well, they shouldn't have said that to me, or I didn't deserve that, or didn't have to be that way. As right as you might be, those emotions are coming because there's something unresolved in you. The truth of the matter is what someone says or does has nothing to do with you. The truth of the matter is that it tells you a lot about them, truthfully, not in a judgmental way, but it's like you're seeing their sunglasses, right, that they were born with. And Lou says, be the action, not the reaction. Yeah, figure out where can you act now given this. Or maybe no action is needed. Maybe you just say nothing. Maybe you just let that emotion burn itself off, right? So he says, it's only when you're willing to claim 100% responsibility for your internal process, regardless of how good the reasons are for blaming others, that you have any chance whatsoever of completing your soul-orchestrated curriculum. Prior to that time, you'll continue as if the gains in the physical world are what life is all about. I don't think it gets much clearer than that, right? Life is not about creating in this physical world and getting things. Once you get it, something else is going to self-populate. You're going to have to go to the next and the next and next. Right? What he says is the moment you take 100% responsibility for your own internal reaction and you start contemplating and seeing what that is when you're really mastering the reason that you're here. That is the soul orchestrated curriculum. I love it. I think that's on page 105. I think that's just like the best little articulation there. So the end of the chapter was really just like practices that he has. So practical ways that you can practice this. I don't know if any of you kind of walked through these examples with him, but he had like 2 different things to kind of walk through and talk yourself through. So I'll just kind of go over them briefly. The first one, it's all about taking responsibility for your choices, okay? And he says you can choose to continue responding to something the way you have been, or you can decide on another course of action. It's up to you. It's a choice point, right? It's not saying, when you take responsibility, it's not saying you have to choose differently. It's just realizing, hey, I'm being reactive and I'm letting myself be reactive, right? It's a choice point of, okay, I can see that I'm the one choosing to be this way. And then whether or not you want to not be that way is up to you, right? It doesn't mean you have to change. It just means you realize the change is yours to make. Okay. And sometimes, we feel reluctant to kind of take responsibility because it kind of makes us have to look at ourselves and go, yeah, like what part did I play in all of that? And we don't like to be wrong. Our egos really hate to be wrong. And so we'll justify like crazy, things that happen. Our ego hates being wrong. And anyway, he says the authentic self isn't concerned with right and wrong. It's only concerned with learning and utilizes the evaluative and what works better approach to life. So if your intention is to live from a soul-centered context, what you want to do is accept what is without judgment. Just take 100% responsibility for whatever your choices were, whatever happened, and then begin making more positive choices, right? There's no judgment on the way you chose. It's just like, okay, from here, now what? Take 100% responsibility for your choices and begin making more positive choices. After all, one really good definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, right? You keep making the same choice over and over and over again, and you keep having the same issues with the same people over and over and over again, right? I know people that they get a new job, and inevitably within 3 months, they're complaining about the boss. And so they quit and they get a new job, and then they quit and then they get a new job because the boss, everywhere they go, is a problem. And it's like, what is the common denominator here? It's you. Right? The boss isn't the problem. It's how you're being with the boss that is the problem. And until you realize that, you're going to have a problem everywhere you go. Right? Because everywhere you go, there you are. That's what it's getting at, okay? So don't beat yourself up, just see it. And so, he kind of offers this for your consideration. It doesn't mean you have to do anything. It just says, consider this. So he says, first of all, center yourself in your heart and consciously look for the loving essence within and allow yourself to identify a current situation that you'd like to be different. He uses the situation of, he wants to write a children's book, but he's just not writing it. So the question you ask yourself, are you aware of any choices, inner or outer, you're presently making that tend to maintain the situation as it is? So this is a great reflection. What am I currently doing, either a mindset or an actual action, that's allowing this situation to occur? This is where we start to take responsibility. Not that we're going to have to change, but just to go, what part am I playing? It's a good question. So in this example, it says, inwardly, I'm aware that when I think of writing, I tell myself that I don't have anything to say, it's really important enough, and outwardly I choose to do other things, and the result is I keep putting off the writing. Just honest. I'm doubting myself, and so I make myself busy with other stuff, right? How many of us can relate? Next, take your time and consider the possibility of other choices that might produce a different result. It's not that you have to do anything differently. Can you simply see any alternatives? Okay, so given that this is what's currently happening, what alternatives are there? Just very neutrally, not saying you have to go do it, just neutrally, consider what is there. And this one says, I could choose to tell myself that what I have to share is valuable and worthwhile, and outwardly I could actually schedule time to sit down and write. That is something I could do. Whether or not you're going to do it, it's up to you. But it's something you could do. Now you see. And the fourth thing is, without committing to doing anything different at this time, take a few minutes and visualize yourself in the process of making the new choice in the present moment, as if you're making it right now. I thought this was really interesting. Visualization is key. What do athletes do? They visualize themselves making the shot every time. They visualize themselves getting, a certain, I used to swim, hitting the wall and seeing a certain time on the clock. They visualize and they rehearse in their mind. It's very powerful what we do inside of our mind. And so it's saying you don't actually have to change, but visualize. What would it be like if you spoke truth to this person? If you spoke up and said what needed saying that would make you feel better, right? What would it be like if you, actually made the time to sit down and write this book and feel good about what you're writing and be confident about what you're writing? What would that look like? Just visualize it. And he puts forth that you should do this for 32 days. It creates a new groove. Super interesting. Doesn't mean you actually have to change, but visualize yourself changing and see if you don't create some positive momentum. I thought that was really fun. So think about something to play with yourself with this. The next one, he kind of gave another kind of walkthrough about taking ownership. So that was about choice, realizing, I could make a different choice. I don't have to, but I could. And what would that choice be? And what would it feel like if I did it? Okay. And then you can decide if you're actually going to do it or not. But he says, regardless of what I am working with, I'm 100% responsible for my internal reality. I am responsible for my attitudes, what I tell myself about my experience, how I choose to deal with it. I'm especially responsible for any negativity I'm running inside of my own self with I'm upset because and, all of these positions outside I'm blaming. My intention is simply to accept what's present and not make myself or any experience wrong. He says, in summary, you must be willing to take individual responsibility for any disturbance you experience. Again, now, this is a process. This is ownership of the experience that you're having. So let's see how he talks about it. Centering yourself again in your heart, finding that loving essence. He says, allow yourself to identify a recent experience where you found yourself experiencing emotional distress and wanting to blame yourself or someone else for what happened and for your reaction. Okay? You can probably think of something that just happened over the weekend, right? Where you're like, they did this, they said this, blah, 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 blah. The example he uses, he continues with the children's book. I've wanted to write a children's book for some time, but I don't even seem to get around to starting it. I tell myself that what I have to say isn't really very important or valuable anyway, and then I get upset because I keep procrastinating. Oops. Okay, so now that you have your thing, utilizing the soul-centered practices of seeing through loving essence and the heart-centered listening, without trying to change anything, allow yourself to move into a place of acceptance. Just acceptance of what is, of your feelings, of your actions, and even of any conclusions you have drawn about yourself. Just accept this. And it says here, I'm learning that the nature of God is love, and that since I'm part of God and my nature is also love, I don't have to like my feelings or my actions in order to accept them. I can simply accept them as for what they are. In fact, that's the most loving and liberating thing I can do. Just, yeah, this is how I'm acting. Period. End of sentence. No judgment. Just, that's how it is. Now, once you've entered a place of acceptance, this is step 3, allow yourself to accept ownership of your feelings and actions without blaming anyone, especially yourself. Remember that no matter what you did, how you felt at the time, or how you're feeling right now, you're still a beautiful, valuable, and lovable soul who's truly doing their best. So, the example says, I can see that I don't have to make anyone wrong, including myself, for my feelings and actions. I can also see that by accepting responsibility for my feelings and actions, I'm free to work on changing them. I'm no longer a victim of what's happening outside of myself. I realize the key, right, to the freedom is the internal choice. I'm taking ownership and I'm going, maybe I could choose different. And then step 4, gently remind yourself that anytime you feel upset, all that has to happen is that your spiritual agenda is revealing places in your consciousness that are in need of healing. And that these situations are God-given opportunities for progressing spiritually. Do you have to progress spiritually? No, but it is an opportunity for you to. So see it as such, all right? Example, I recognize that this entire situation is pointing out to me a place where I have work to do regarding my own sense of unworthiness or lack of value, right? The whole reason you're not sitting down to write the book is because you feel like you're not worthy of it. You don't have anything of value to say. All right. And when I choose to accept responsibility for that situation and my own inner process, I have tremendous feeling of empowerment. Like, wow, maybe I need to work on that. Maybe I need to see my own value, right? This opens the door to the process. He gives the example of like, you were sitting in the stadium. Now you're down on the ball field. You got a bat in your hand. Now you can start to swing, right? You can start to create a new groove. You all of a sudden realize, wow, I can get into the arena. I don't have to be a spectator. I can make a difference in this whole situation. Does that make sense? It's so empowering. So he again says 32 days of doing this would be great. So an offering out to all of you. You don't have to, but you could follow this. And how interesting. All right. I hope you're taking advantage of these stem sentences that he has at the end. So he's got the stem sentence. If what happens outside myself doesn't cause me to be upset, but merely triggers upset already present in my consciousness, then what does that mean? All right, for me, I wrote, then it's helping me see where I have incomplete issues to work on. So anytime I get triggered, it's like, there's my work, right? School's in session. The next sentence. And if what happens outside of myself doesn't cause me to be happy, but merely triggers happiness already present in my consciousness, then what? This is great. We always talk about sort of the bad side. This is the good side. So if I'm happy because this happened, then what does that also mean? Well, it means I can choose to be happy no matter what is going on. I can live with my heart open and happy no matter what. No certain circumstances have to happen for me to be happy either. Very empowering. Okay, if I'm truly willing to take 100% personal responsibility for everything that goes on in my inner awareness, with no exceptions, then, I said, I have a power no person or event can touch. Like, that's it. When you take internal responsibility, everything's on your shoulders. It's the good news and the bad news. Okay. If unresolved issues are not bad, then life is just learning and I should probably not take it so seriously. That's how I answered that sentence. If unresolved issues are part of my spiritual curriculum, then it is great when they get triggered so I can do the work my soul deserves and the whole reason of why I came here. All right, I hope that you are doing those stem sentences. They're really great. We are going to read chapter 6 next, Meet the Stackers. I have no idea what that means. I think we can do it in a week. So it's a little over 10 pages. We'll attempt to do all of chapter 6 next week. All right, so I will see you back here next week. We'll enjoy that. And if you've got any comments, questions, whatever, we've got the Telegram chat. You just reply to it. I don't know why I set it up that way, but anyway, it's set up that way. I can't change it. So if you want to comment in the chat, you just have to reply to something I say, and then the comments will come. All right, so lots of love. I hope this was a great start to your week. It is amazing to take ownership over your life and to realize that is where your power is and always has been. And you can choose to be happy, choose to make this life exactly what you need it to be. All right, lots of love to all of you, and I'll see you next week.